Here with Joe. Here's the intro. Ooh, that rhymes.
Small minds discuss other people. Gossip. Good minds discuss events. Great minds discuss ideas.
It flows.
What's up?
And hey, Joseph, my longtime buddy,
Mhm.
brother in some ways. Uh, when is it that we figured out we've known each other longer than we haven't known each other? When was that? That was like a year ago.
Yeah. It's Chicago. I think it was in Chicago because we met in 2000, 2000, yeah, 2000, year 2000.
2000. Yeah. Or one, somewhere in there.
Yeah, 2001.
No, 2000. No. Anyway, the point is we've known each other longer than we haven't known each other, and also I was thinking this morning, we've known each other, like our lives have overlapped in ways that very few people in my life have. So it's weird. Sometimes I have to think, does Joseph know this guy? Because
Yeah,
you know
I know
how
what you're
worlds
saying. Because in my mind, like people are segmented in my life, like the college phase,
high school, college,
and then we had gone back and forth because we went to college. Well, initially we met, and then we didn't really start getting to know each other until senior year.
Yeah,
and then I went and moved up near you in Chicago. We lived together.
Then we worked together.
We worked together.
That was another overlap.
Yeah. Just all these spheres, and then going in the Navy, coming back, it was almost like it was a reconnecting again. Because when I moved back to Chicago, you were out in Westmont, and I felt like it was like for me, it was like a whole new aspect of my life, new phase, and then we're there again, so it's weird. So
yeah, but it's cool. I like it. And we also had a podcast together. We did the Chicken Foot podcast. I hope your kids
like it, because they're gonna be watching after me when I'm old. Because I plan to come back and live right next door to you.
He's back.
I'm having a heart attack too. Take me to the hospital too. He's hungry. I'm hungry over here too.
All right. Well, so the new thing that I'm doing, I just couldn't stand not talking to my friends online, and so I thought I started Ramble Source about like 2010. It was like 12 years ago I started.
Okay.
And
where
I just liked it.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. You were saying, because you mentioned briefly why the title and the focus.
Well, yeah. So in the background, you can see it's like that's the Ramble Source. I was thinking about changing it this morning, but it's like getting to. I feel like in podcasts, people don't like podcasts to just ramble on, kind of like, and I tend to do that. I tend to ramble with my friends. So, in order to help those watching with us, I thought that we'd get to the source. And I remember as a kid, there was a source we would go to. We called it the source. It was just this pipe in a mountain that had fresh, wonderful water that came out of it. We'd go get water there. It was delicious. And so hopefully we can mine some interesting ideas. In the intro, that the voice you hear is Washington, Denzel Washington. In his speech, he says, "Small minds talk about other people, gossip. Good minds talk about events. Great minds talk about ideas." And so I love that concept, and sort of the progression as well. I like talking about ideas, and I know you do too.
It was the opposite. I thought you're like, hey, You like rambling? Well, this is the source for all the rambling, man. You're gonna have like Steve Martin, he does the rambling, man with the banjo. It's like, hey, you like all your rambling? Get all your rambling needs right here.
Well, honestly, that is sort of there is sort of a double entendre there, because I did think of like having a subtitle, all the rambling with no sources or something. but good to see you, man. And
Yeah.
I titled this humor, and because I mean, we've always connected on humor. I mean, from day one. And even though I'm asking everybody this whole thing of like, what are your 5? I don't know where I heard this, but I heard it and it stuck with me. I thought it was Tony anyways, sociologist, who said that there was, but then I looked into it and I think what he said is everybody falls in love 6 times. And somehow I morphed that into everybody has 5 core sermons or 5 core stump speeches, or I like what you said, like 5 core topics that they come back to. You know how it is, like every person is the capacity to talk about things. I always come back to 3 to 5 core philosophies.
Mm-hmm.
And I just am curious about yours.
Well, give me like an idea, like if you were bullet point it.
Yeah.
The 3
so
or 5 that you come to.
Yeah. So for me, and part of this is I don't expect you to know them, just to really kind of think about it, maybe talk them out with me, because it's partly a journey for me to figure out mine. 2 of the ones I realized I have are that. So I'll go through the ones that we've been through this week, not just me, but others. So for me, that giving advice, I don't know if we talked about this actually, giving advice that I should not give advice. I should use I statements, talk about myself and my own experience, and not preach. I feel like this whole, everybody has 3 to 5 core ideas or sermons or whatever it is, that's also one of mine. Like I always try to figure out like what is mine and what are other people's. Encouragement is better than criticism is another one that I tend to come back to. And these are things typically, as I'm thinking about it with other people, these are things that we don't have figured out.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's something that I struggle with, that I tend to preach to other people. And you're a counselor. It's funny, I've mostly talked to counselors this week, and it's it's what my profession was, and most of the people I know, most of professions I've been part of have been counseling, and so that's probably makes sense. But that is kind of interesting. I don't think I met anyway. So getting back to the idea that we come back to these. So my dad's was read the Bible, King James only.
Mm-hmm.
He also the importance of the family table. Jovan, a friend of mine I used to work to, his were not to be a victim, speak the truth even when it's uncomfortable, and manhood, the importance of strength and manhood. For Josh, his was a little interesting. I think he's really dove into his private practice lately, and he talked about like something that's really come up lately for him in counseling. And his was that we are since the World War II, we are expected to go deeper and more intimate with our significant others. And as we do, it's not going to be met with it's going to be met with confusion or discord. And who else did I talk to? I think I talked to Diego, and one of his core things was to stay positive, keep things organized without being judgmental. So they're all like different things that people have found in their life have come up over and over again. For you and if I could guess for you, I think I know one that comes up a lot for you.
Okay.
And that is correct me if I'm wrong, but we should stay away from extremes and find a way to work together.
Yeah, I think I definitely like that idea, but I think I've come to because the ones that I wrote down, I was like, there's something kind of tying these together. And I was like, what is it? As I was writing them down, I was like, something seems to tie. And then I remembered that I think I told you years ago that I just kind of my philosophy on life is, if I were to boil it down to a motto or a slogan or anything, the two things that I said, look, out of everything that I do or think or say, it should be two things: be respectful and be honest. Those were the two. I don't know if I ever brought that up to you.
I don't remember that.
And at first I thought, man, be respectful and be honest. Those aren't hard. You know what I mean? You kind of know what those are. And especially to be honest, is like, just tell the truth. But it's more than telling the truth, because be honest is also honest with yourself. That was the hardest one. So like the idea that I would come up to, and I would think about what percentage of what I think isn't real or true. Like, how would you know what percent? Like, if you were to put it, because to say that 0% of what you think is true, like you said, the extremes, those are out of, who thinks, if you think 100% of what you think is true, then I don't know. But if you thought 0% of what you wouldn't function. You wouldn't function in the world. Right. So what percentage of what you think is really true or right? Real.
Like the spectrum of truth.
Yeah. So like, what I think about how people perceive me or interaction. What percentage of it is, am I really picking up the correct frequency of what they're saying or doing or thinking? And how much is it me filling in the gaps and just putting in there? It could be good stuff, it could be bad stuff. It doesn't, I could be thinking that they think I'm awesome, or I think they could think I'm horrible. It's just like, so being able to be honest with myself and really question, is this like, is this really real of what I'm thinking? Is this really the right thing? And the be respectful is the same thing with you. Be respectful with myself. One of the biggest struggles I had is my perception of myself, and a lot of emotional struggles and stuff that I had with myself, because I didn't really respect myself. You know what I mean? I didn't really treat myself with respect and dignity, and feel like felt like I was even worth the effort and the time to be treated with respect and dignity. So the topics that I seem to be, that I seemed, the four that seem to come up that are like my soapbox, you know what I mean? Like the thing.
Yeah.
I if I were to talk about my philosophy in life or
that's a better way to say it. Yeah. Soapbox. Yeah.
Then it would be these things tend to come up in my mind of what I would want to like relay to somebody. And I was like, for some reason, there's something that seems to tie all these. And then I realized it's the be respectful and be honest, both with others and then with yourself.
Yeah.
You know? And so
that's something when you see when you see it happening, that it seems to me like what you're saying is when you see somebody being disrespectful and dishonest, or when you see yourself being like that, that's something that really bothers you.
Yeah, I felt like what promotes healthy well-being, right? I mean, if something promotes people to be healthy or their well-being, I mean, can it be wrong? You know what I mean? Anything that destroys a healthy relationship or somebody's well-being, I would imagine it's going to be toxic, right? So for me, like, and then being respectful and being honest builds a sense of authenticity, trust, and a sense of connection to the other person. You know, if people think you're authentic and they think that you're who they're seeing is really you, or like you're honestly how you're presenting yourself, you know what I mean? Like the way you present yourself is really who you are, even if you're a jerk. You know what I mean? If you're a jerk, but people know that you're kind of a jerk, they're like, they can still kind of like you. But if you're coming off as being a nice person or a respectful person, but then behind closed door, you're like a jerk, and you're always like, and then everybody's like
dishonesty in that.
Yeah, and then people are like, oh, is he doing that with me or something? You know what I mean? So the 4 things that I, maybe 5,
okay,
if I were to do it, what percentage of what I know and think is real? You know, that's part of the be honest. And it kind of falls under be respectful too, because, you know, I think you and I have had disagreements before where it got a little heated, and because my perception of what you were saying or what you thought or what you believed was really me putting it on you. And so then I was kind of more leaning on the disrespectful side because I perceived you as a certain way than what you were really thinking on a topic or something. The other one is, this one might be a left fielder, so I might wait on this one.
Okay.
The next one is ready to die.
Ready to die.
Yeah. Being on it, because like my mom had a very difficult time with my grandmother because my grandfather passed away. I mean, maybe 15, maybe, I don't know how, like 15 years before she did. And she wouldn't leave the house. She, you know, I mean, she just was alone in the house, you know, and so she wasn't, and so when she had to go to a nursing home, so she never went to a senior living community with other seniors, and you know what I mean, or any kind of being accepting of your age, of where you are in your life. And because of that, so many things were missed, medical things. And so she went from her house to nursing home, right? And that
stuck with you.
Yeah, that's a huge jump, because you know, the idea that, you know, you don't want to give up your independence, you don't want to give up your life, your house, the ability to drive, but by living in like a senior living or senior community, you're able to actually live longer independent, because you're in an area where everybody else is kind of going through the same thing, and you're more aware. You know, you have like your will or your, you know, DNR, DNI. I don't know if people know what that is. Do not resuscitate. Do not.
Oh yeah.
Those kind of things. Like if something were to happen to you, do you want, what life-saving treatment do you want or not want? because it's so hard on the kids. My mom really, really suffered. And my grandmother, she had like dementia, and she was so mean to my mom. She was really mean. And she was not mean to my aunt or uncle as much as she was my mom, because my mom was the oldest. So she had like the power of,
Attorney and
attorney.
stuff.
Oh, yeah. So she had to make decisions, and it was the bottom line. It was her. I mean, she discussed it with my uncle and my aunt, but bottom line, it was her signature.
Yeah.
So my grandmother blamed her for putting her in a nursing home, and she'd be like, "You put me here." Like, ouch. Like, you know what I mean? That hurts.
Yeah.
But because we don't want to, I remember my grandmother used to say, "I'm never going to die." And at first I thought it was kind of like a humorous thing she would just always say, but I think she would just, it's almost like a big middle finger to the idea that life is limited. And she was just, she just wouldn't accept that idea. So ready to die, it's like being honest with where you are in your life, what's going on with your body. I think about, my dad had injured his back after he retired. So he injured his back, and now he's got really serious back pain, and he spent his whole life working, and now that he's retired, now he has the back pain because he injured it. But because he was driving like this big motorcycle, one of those long cruisers, you know what I mean, that you can do long distance with, that like big. And he was at a light, and then it was starting to like tip, and he went to jerk to pull it back, and it like had an injury in his back. But because he thought he was younger, you know what I mean, he's still doing the younger things that he thinks that he can still do. And he injured himself. And so ready to die is being able to be honest with yourself, with what you can and can't do,
what stage you're in.
And be respectful of your body, you know what I mean, and your mind, and of your family, putting them in the position where they have to take you out of your home to put you in a nursing home is horrible. It's a horrible position. But if eventually one day, I mean, I don't know if this is lucky or not lucky, that if you were to die without getting to the point of needing a nursing home, you know what I mean? If you were to die in your sleep, or you had cancer or something, I don't know whether that's good or bad, depending on, I guess, your own philosophy. But if you live to be an older person and your body, like you have dementia to where your faculties aren't there, but your body is still living on, your family can't take care of you. I remember this book, The Promise He Kept, The Promise I Kept, I think it is. It's about this, he was a president of some college, and his wife had dementia. And the trials and struggles he had, because most guys, when their wife has dementia, they end up leaving them. Most women, if they have their husband has dementia, they'll stay with them. But he decided to stay with his wife, and just the really difficulty he had, where she would just walk out of the house without shoes, and she was just in the cold, and she's just walking around. And he tells this story of where he was in the airport, and he's trying to get on a flight and all that stuff, and then she walks away, and he's like trying to find her, because he was meeting with the ticket person. He gets her back, and he gets her, and then he remembers this businesswoman, tearful, saying, I hope I can find somebody who would be able to be that for me, but being able to say, that might be me, so how can I make it easy on my family, and so
the promise kept, a promise kept,
a promise. I think that's what it's called. I might be wrong. And
no, it's A Promise Kept, the story of unforgettable love. I think that's
and it's not a long book. It's like maybe
Mm.
50 to 100 pages. And then even then it's like, it's meant to be more of a nice looking book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So where like you're reading it, but it's got all these decorations on the page. And so it's not
Yeah,
full
yeah.
of text. It's like some text, some, looks nice and stuff.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
I gave it as a gift a couple times.
It
So
looks like it would make a good. It's very like artistically presented.
yeah. It's got like roses and stuff. I think it has on there. So that was one. That was another one, that Ready to Die.
Mm.
Being okay with being humbled. That was a third one.
Ooh.
And
Ooh.
it reminds me of a scripture where Paul's talking to the Corinthians, and he says,
Mm.
why can't you just be defrauded? Where they're talking about
Mm.
suing other Christians, and
Mm.
and then he says, why can't you just be defrauded? Saying, they took advantage of you. Okay, so what? You can still forgive them and you still move on. That doesn't mean you just let people take advantage of you all the time, but to be able to end up on the short end of the stick and be okay with it,
Yeah.
without going into too much
Wow.
detail. But this week I had a serious behind chewing from my boss. And it just seemed like to never end. Like it just was like this issue just kept coming up because it kept snowballing, because I thought, okay, because it was last week. They're like, we're going to talk about this on next week. And I was like, oh God, and I'm all weekend. I'm like, this is just like, it's just
That's the worst.
So Monday we had a meeting about something else. And then I just said, let's just bring it up. And I brought it up and said, hey, can we talk about this? And they're like, okay. So I was like, I addressed it. Over. And then it kept coming up, other thing. And I was like, dang it. And then I started feeling guilt. I was like, then I started thinking, now as my supervisor seeing me in a different light, and now every little thing is already jacked up, ratcheted up to 10 because of this other stuff, and then I'm pounding on myself, like, do they think less of me now? Is this, and be okay with, and it was like a serious issue. So I took it as, I'm glad I got a little behind chewing, because it's a serious issue dealing with work, and it could affect my livelihood, my license, So even though they're yelling at me and saying I really screwed up, it's really a warning saying, look, and so they gave me an example of somebody I know who is in court, and because the VA is being sued, and so he has to keep going to court and testifying, and so who knows what it was going to end up being, but all because of not being attentive to certain details, and to really be specific, we have to do, and without getting into the weeds and boring stuff, but there's certain measures we have to do with veterans all the time. Depression scale, suicide scale, those kind of things. And, those are, suicide is a serious issue with a lot of veterans. And so we have to do it annually, and you got a caseload of people, you got stuff going on. You're like, okay, well, it's been good for the last 12 months. I get to it like next week and then next, it's like a month passed or something. And if something were to happen, then, your tail is on the line. And then if there's a certain rating that they get, you gotta have a safety plan with them. So say like you forgot to write a safety plan with them or something. So anyways, long story short, it's a serious topic, serious issue. It could cost me my livelihood, maybe even my freedom. Go to prison, maybe. If I am not aware. So the being yelled at, to me, I took it as a warning, but when it came up, because it wasn't initially my fault.
Right.
Like I was giving these veterans and it was already expired, and so I'm trying to like locate these veterans and I couldn't locate them, because I couldn't locate them, and we're talking about homeless people, you know what I mean? And so I couldn't locate them, and I was like, oh man, so it's getting longer and longer than a year.
Yeah.
And so I'm not properly documenting details that would cover myself because of that. Well, long story short, I needed the talking to. I took it, but initially I was like knee-jerk reaction, like this ain't my fault. What are you getting on me for? You know, like yelling at me. But I took it as like a good warning, a good reminder of the seriousness of what I do. But being able to say, you know what? Why can't you just be defrauded? Why can't you just say, you know what, I was in the wrong? And that's what I just said. I said, you know what? I was stupid. I don't know what I was thinking. It won't happen again. And I just took it as like being okay with I'm in the wrong.
Yeah.
Which that's a tough thing to do. And that's not something a lot of people will say to themselves to be okay with.
Yeah. Humility in particular, it's not funny. I think it makes sense that some of the most difficult things in life are the most useful, the most helpful and healthy. Being humble, humility is, I think, I mean, just talking to you and hearing about, because that's kind of a common theme in what you're talking about, humility. Because even in end life stuff and this, it's super hard to, I guess one thing I'm realizing is like, especially if we're not particularly anchored in life. I think as I've been in various places and right now, I guess right now I'm trying to find a little bit more anchoring. It's harder to be humble because it's like when somebody is defining reality for me, if I'm not really sure what the reality of things are, where I stand on things, then it makes it shakier, and it makes me kind of it doesn't make me, but I tend to be more defensive. And who are you to tell me how things are? When really humility, I think it comes out of a real secure place. One has to be in a secure place in their heart and their life to be humble.
I remember,
but it also, do you think, go ahead.
I was going to tell you where I got it from. Obviously humility is not unique. I mean, it came, but where I saw a good example of it and then it stuck with me. So that's where I got it from, as a good example, and and then how it relates back to the be respectful, be honest. So I remember when I first enlisted in the Navy, and we're going to boot camp, and they're yelling at you. They're always in your face, and they're like, and you had to fill out a logbook. Like when you're doing your watch, how you write it, the letters, the way you're writing it, the type that you're writing it in, the organization of how it goes, all that kind of stuff. It's very detailed. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And all that kind of stuff. And so you can't just like wing it, and you got different types of fonts all over the place, and people doing different things. And what does this mean and that mean? It's a standard. So even you go to the logbook, you'll know what's being said, regardless of who said it a year ago or whatever. Anyways, I remember I was on watch with somebody, and the person didn't want to, because you always have a tendency not to want to admit you're wrong. So they wrote it wrong in the logbook, and then our RDC came over and says, "Why'd you do that?" And they're like, "Oh, well, I was just, giving like excuses. How you give excuses." He's like, "If you don't know something, just say you don't know." So that's it, and then I could tell you. And instead of trying to like bullshit your way out of it, or trying to like in your mind, like, how can I escape this emotional like blame and all this, just something you don't know. And that changed a lot of how I perceive life and how I approach life. And you gotta be humble, and where you should know something, or you in your mind think, I'm at this station in my life, I should know this, and to say I don't know it, it's gonna make me look stupid. You know what I mean? So to be
It
okay,
takes courage.
yeah, just to say, you know what does that mean?
Right.
I don't know. What do I do here? And be able to ask for help, and it's it relates back to the be humbled and be able to admit you're wrong, or to ask for help, or say you don't know. It's being respectful of the other person, because if you're being humbled, the other person, I don't know if you've ever had to talk to somebody about an issue or a topic that is not fun to talk about. And so that people are going to have a knee-jerk reaction. And so I'm sure my supervisor was like, I don't want to have to talk to him about this. This is not a fun time.
You had to bring it up, right? Like they didn't.
I brought it up. So that kind of made it easier on me, but I'm sure it's easier for them, because my supervisor later on said, thank you for bringing it up. Because it's like going into this topic knowing that you're going to have this very difficult discussion. It's not fun. And so it was respectful of them to say, I know it's not fun. I don't want to have to feel this. You know what I mean? I don't want to have to go through this emotion of being like, I did something stupid. And, but it was respectful of them. And it was me being honest with myself that, I did mess up. And make it easier on them. Because we don't want it easier on them, because then it's less likely that they're going to confront us with stuff. You know what I mean? And that's the not being honest with ourselves, is we're kind of like saying to ourselves, we really aren't wrong, because nobody's really confronting us, because they know, it's going to be a big issue. And so they're like, you know what, I'm not going to confront this person on this thing, because I don't want to have like a big thing about it. And so I never confront them. So in my mind, I can play like, oh, well, technically no one's ever confirmed me on it, so am I really wrong? You know what I mean? So it's a way to say that it's not being honest with myself. I'm lying to myself because I don't want to feel the feeling of guilt, shame, or that I was wrong.
Well, that's where I think humor in particular comes into play. I think at least for me, humor, it gives the bridge over into, because I'm able to keep things honest, but and it's almost like irony can illuminate truth without completely confronting failure, or it makes fun of the failure, self-deprecation. There are all kinds of aspects to humor that are able to, and of course, if we're laughing, we're assuaging that feeling of the painful feeling. What is that feeling? I guess the uncomfortable feeling, the painful feeling that we feel, even if we're confronting somebody else, is the rejection. I think, right? It's fear this person is not going to like me, and
I just ruined my relationship with them. The rapport, and I like them, or I get along with them, and I want to maintain that homeostasis state of this good relationship,
status quo.
And so the last one, and I don't know how this, I mean, maybe loosely, this is, because humor is a tool. It's a tool that I use for a lot for this kind of general, be respectful, be honest. But the last one, maybe you can, but it seems like it's more, that game, 6 Degrees of Separation, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, where you name an actor and you can get to Kevin Bacon through other actors that actor worked with, and you can eventually get to Kevin Bacon. So it's more like you can get to be respectful and be honest through like 6 degrees of separation, but it's not like direct. So the last one was being a Renaissance man. I remember learning about the Renaissance and what was that course we had to do in Winterham where we had to read Francis Schaeffer?
Western.
How can we then live, or how shall we then live, or Western? I don't remember the name of the course, but the idea.
The book was how shall we then live, but the course was Western thought and culture.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's where initially I got the idea, because a Renaissance man was someone who necessarily weren't an expert in everything, but they were well versed in a lot of areas. You know what I mean? So you tried to be artistic, but you also tried to be understand philosophy and understand math and understand business, and like you should have a well-rounded life and understanding of the world. And you may not be like the best painter, but you understand the fundamentals of painting, right? Yeah. Or you may not be the best business person, but you understand the fundamentals of business, whatever, you know what I mean? So that you are, I guess it kind of goes back to what percentage of the knowledge I have is true or not. You know what I mean? To be able to understand and also do to like I remember thinking people, they used to write poetry. Like, who writes poetry now? But it was part of like a learned education, is people would do some sort of artistic outlet, whether music or poetry. But when people would get a degree, they also majored in theology. Theology was like always a part of like major higher education learning, So because it was always seen as being like you want to get well-rounded, so you would read the ancient Greek philosophers as well as modern readers and modern writers. I mean, so that kind of like thing is another one. I feel like even though I never used that phrase, Renaissance man, even though that's a well-known phrase, it's the idea of being acquainted with things that aren't necessarily in your comfortable box, your comfort
area of expertise. Yeah.
Well,
so, the thought that comes to mind is Venn diagrams. Having enough circles that overlap, that the core of me, because I tend to agree with that. I like to have that Renaissance approach, so that if I have more bubbles, when they overlap, that core is more complicated and more versatile.
Yeah. And I think the be honest is you begin to accept that the world is really complicated, and problems. There's a lot of solutions to problems. Some may be better than others. I remember Dr. Elkins used to say, all worldviews have holes in them. Some just take on more water than others. You know, and it's if you oversimplify the world, it's this or that, then I think that's where I think you the idea that you were saying, the extremes, I think it's the this or that thinking, either or, and that's really, I think so. Yeah, I think that is kind of a thing where it's not always the either or. Sometimes it's a both and.
Right.
And that's
I've heard you say that a lot.
That definitely is a me thinking, and I think that is because the extremes is my way or the highway. You know what I mean? There's no give or take. It's just this is the way it's going to be. It more edicts, not conversations, not working together. It's like, this is the edict of what we want. Boom. And that's not what I like. And I think the world is more complex to be able to say, where's the Venn diagram of what we can kind of work together, and then you're still being honest, because to be honest is saying, maybe I'm wrong. You know what I mean? And so I think, what you said, I think is true in this, the extremes. I don't like the extremes. It's the working together, but I think that's a way to describe the outworking of it's either or thinking, or both and. I like the both.
Well, and I think that gets to what you're saying about respect and honesty, in the sense of being honest about the complexity of life and respecting the other side, right? Like that. When somebody says it's my way or the highway, you're neither being honest with the situation, the reality of the situation. No, guess what? It's not. I can walk away. And two, it's not being respectful of whatever they have to say. And I think that's something I've really appreciated about you, and that's why I came back to that. That's what came to mind first, is because that's something I've always respected about you, is that you've always sort of, well, let's take a look at it deeper, let's look at all the factors here, and guess what, we're not really going to know 100% either way. One of the things my brother says that I like is when somebody says that it's absolutely this way, typically that's typically it's not. Whenever he hears somebody say in absolute terms, then
no
that's when he knows they're full of crap.
It's funny, I've been thinking about this idea, toying with it, and maybe I'll just run it by you. The difference between taking care of like your child, or child abuse, taking care of an animal and animal abuse, or taking care of your parent and elder abuse, is the difference between seeing them as a property, as like, I own this pet, you know what I mean? Or being seen as a caretaker. I don't own this pet, I'm a caretaker to this pet. And I've been thinking the idea that you can't own anything that lives. If you believe that you own anything that lives, then it goes from like them to having autonomy to them as an object that you can control. And that's where the seeds of abuse come from. So, because you don't see your kids as you own them, you see them as like you're caring for them, you're educating them, you're teaching them, helping them grow, and helping them avoid pitfalls, things they don't know. But eventually they're going to be on their own, right? And that's where the abuse starts coming in, is they need that control still, because now they're getting out of their control, and they want that, maintain that control. So the abuse starts setting in, where they're isolating them from friends, having the ability to have independence, and taking advantage of them, because you own like a chair, right? And
well, I don't know, like that is a debate, is whether we can own anything. What makes ownership?
Right. Well, this is what I like. If I own a piece of furniture, I can choose to take care of it or not, right? I can, like, if it's starting to fray or something, I can say, I'm going to sand it down, repaint it, so, or I can be like, I'm throwing it in the dumpster, I get a new one, right? But if you do that to a living thing, there's a sense of cruelty there, even with the plant. Like the plant's dying, and like, instead of trying to water it, get it sunlight, do that, I'll just throw it out and get a new one and then start fresh. You know what I mean? It's kind of, even though it's a plant, you're still thinking, that's kind of like, you had a responsibility to take care of the plant, and you just neglected it for all that time. And then you're like, I'm gonna just start over, get a new one. Even though it's just a plant, you're still kind of like, in my mind, I'm still feeling like you kind of gave up on them. You know what I mean? You're still
Right.
not
I
feeling
think,
right by
but that
them,
comes
doing
back.
right by them.
Yeah, I think that comes back more though to the idea of respect, and really, even with inanimate things, we should have respect and shouldn't, we shouldn't toss just because,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the intrinsic value of something and its beauty. To me, it's just like levels of that, and humans have more intrinsic value and beauty.
Yeah, I guess
Things
waste.
that have life, huh?
Yeah, like the idea of waste, because
Hmm.
like my grandmother and stuff. I don't know about you, but I remember she used to have this. My dad's mom used to have this like little plastic circle thing where she would squeeze
Yeah,
it and then open them, have all this little change in there, and so
yeah.
she would give exact change when it was like to the register, and I'm like, just give her a 5. You know what I mean? She's got to give $4.73, but she's frugal. You know what I mean? She wasn't just going
Yeah,
to
yeah,
waste. She's going to make every cent count.
yeah.
And the idea that my grandmother used to jar stuff. You know what I mean? Like peaches, she would jar canning or whatever it's called, where you can preserve it. And she would make
Mm,
jellies and jams out of stuff because she didn't want it to go waste. And I remember when
right.
she passed away, my Aunt Linda was like, I mean, there was cabinets full of jellies and jams in the refrigerator. It'd be like deep. So she's giving them away to everybody because she canned everything. She didn't want anything to go to waste because she had like a peach tree in the yard, and so
Ah,
she would just make jellies and jams out of everything. And she knew how to can it. So she'd put it in a jar
yeah.
and stuff. And uh, after she passed away, I mean, everybody in the neighborhood like had 6 jars of jelly. You know what I mean? Like, but it was the sense of,
Yeah,
respecting
yeah.
maybe money, or the idea of not being wasteful, or
Mhm.
because the more wasteful, it's like, say someone who doesn't have, you're just like, you know what? Someone doesn't have blankets, and I'm like, oh, this one's the color's fading. Throw it out. You know what I mean? There's people freezing on the street, and I'm like, throw it out. It doesn't look as blue as it used to. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah,
as opposed to like, I guess the Goodwill, that kind of like reused clothing and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and I remember my dad would always say, because I don't know how many cars are sold in America every year, but it's like way more than I would even guess. And my dad would be like, "Who's buying all these cars?" You know what I mean?
Yeah,
How do people have all this money to buy all these cars? And so you're just
yeah.
getting like new cars every year. So every year you're getting new and new cars. Like, how are we? We only have like 300 million people in the United States, right? And even then, maybe half of them are kids. You know what I mean? So how are we selling all these cars and
Yeah.
every year over year? And so I don't know the number. I don't know if you're looking it up or anything. The number of cars are sold in America every year. But if
It's
we
gotta be
would do it
millions,
for the
yeah.
last 10 years, it would almost be like everybody gets a new car every 3 years or something. What's going on? It's just kind of a
Yeah,
weird thing. And some of it is the idea that also you can't work on your car.
mm,
My dad, I remember my dad would go out and he'd be working on the truck, you know what I mean?
mhm.
The engine, working on the engine and doing stuff. And I'd be out there and we're like, oh, that's the ordnance nator. Like, that's just how much I know. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh wow, that's orange tater. You know, but my dad, he would
Well,
buy these books, the like a manual that you can go to like AutoZone, and it would be like, uh, this car manual for Ford Mustangs from this year to this year. And then it would go detail of like the engine, how to take it apart and alternator and all that kind of stuff and what to do. And it would go in detail, how do you do those manual repair things?
Yeah.
And now you can't do it electronically. There's so much stuff and the tools. I mean, even like the wheels on my tire, I can't even take the wheels off my tire. You got to have like a special key to unlock the bolts.
Yeah.
So
I think that's and tell me what you think about this, but I think that's one area that is going to change in America. I think we're going to go to much. I think what you're going to see is people getting frustrated with that kind of thing and making their own cars, making their own little, like being able to get to their neighbor's house by this little like engine they put together. I don't think it's going to be, jetpacks and flying cars. I think it's going to actually regress to, because we have so much technology now. You just get on ChatGPT and figure out like how do I turn this generator I bought into a boat? I was thinking about that yesterday because I was trying to get we had a tropical storm that just hit us. It was mostly rain, but
well, when I look at
my generator started, and I thought about that. It smelled like a boat, and I was like, oh, what if I use this as a boat engine? How could I?
When I look at movies that tell about the future, Blade Runner seemed the most likely, because when you watch Blade Runner, there's a lot of analog stuff, like they're flipping switches to turn things on. Everything isn't just like touched and visual and just saying, like Minority Report, it's like they're reading your retina from a distance, and then everything is like digital and they're just moving their hands with the computer. But I think analog is still going to be there. And that's why, some of the side note why I don't think AI is really going to be a big of an issue is everything is not going to be computerized where a computer can read it and do it. There has to be there's going to be an analog system. Just like my car, I, have to flip the switch to start it. Sure, you can press the button, but there's still a sense of like, I have to click or double click on my computer. There's some manual thing that has to be done. And I think that seems like it's still going to be a bigger part of people in reality. Because I think we're tactile, and just to be like screens and just like this kind of stuff, that I don't think is very satisfying as being able to flip a switch. You know what I mean? Or
particularly to us, but I do think there is going to be a generation, and I think it's going to split. I think there is going to be a group that they just they prefer to do everything through, there are cars now that there is nothing you turn on. You can do it from your phone. You just boop, boop, boop. And Elon Musk type are going more that way. Where
even so, I think
they're even tying it into your brain.
Yeah, they may like classify certain areas where like I don't want to do that with my car, but they'd like to do that with something else. You know what I mean? Where they like the manual feel of being able to do something. I don't know. But I was just thinking that what was I going to say about, go back a little bit of what you were saying about
there's going to be split up into two groups where
now I remember what I was going to say. Earlier you're talking about like being able to repair your car. I thought for sure, and maybe this will happen because of the popularity of like Uber and Lyft, that car companies would sell worker-friendly cars. Like basically Uber cars that you can use just for Uber, so that the driver's seat is way more comfortable than the passenger in the back seat, right? And the passenger in the back seat are easy to clean. You know what I mean? And then it reminds me of those, those classic looking New York City cabs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
They got big leather flat seats.
Yeah,
easy
yeah, and
clean.
it's like orange cab, and they made it to where you can work on it. So like the panels can be switched in and out easily. And so that you can repair it so that there's little downtime. So if something happens to the taxi, they can bring it in and they can fix it and put it right back out. And so it's very worker friendly, you know? And so like the front right panel of the car is the same panel as the back left panel. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of similarities in the panels. So if this dent, you know, so basically you only need so many different types of panels as opposed to your bumper. So the bumper on the front and the back are the same. You know what I mean? And you can even switch out the doors. So the way the doors hinge is the hinge can be flipped to either from the back passenger to the front passenger, or the driver's to the back passenger seat, and just the hinges. So everything was worker
interchangeable.
Yeah, interchangeable and stuff, and very reusable. Sort of, that was the whole popularity of the Volkswagen Bug and the van. You know, they basically just had an engine. They didn't have air conditioning. You know what I mean? It was just
It is kind of fascinating to me that doesn't catch on more. I remember a phone I thought was going to be hugely, wildly popular was the one where they could interchange different parts on it. Didn't even catch on. Nobody cared about it. There's something about interchangeability and that kind of thing that doesn't track with American consumerism right now, at least. And I was trying to figure it out the other day, because I was thinking technology just in certain areas just does not go as fast as I would assume. You know, there's things that we're using similar window units now than I was, than we had in my house 20 years ago. It's like nothing really has. Of course, now you're starting to see a little bit with people breaking into you can get these little portable air conditioners. I'm like, man, why did it take so long? And they're really not that good. Like, it's weird to me how
it's kind of that joke I always tell you about, like, kind of that bit, like, we need to get the scientists who are working on toothpaste into cancer, because they're making all kinds of breakthroughs in toothpaste. They're like, this kind of toothpaste, new this, like, whoa, this. We need to get those people into cancer because they're making all kinds of breakthrough in toothpaste technology, and in the areas we need them, they're not in. So it's true. It's so funny. It's like areas, but I think it's like because technology, everything moves so fast and everything can be outdated. So it's like they're just, why update something like this when there's just something that's just going to replace it? You know what I mean? Instead of updating it, it's just going to be replaced. So, but I think now it's starting to level out, because even social media, things aren't replacing things like they used to. So like Facebook replaced MySpace, Instagram used to, there's other apps. I can't remember all the apps. They had like a whole bunch of like different, I'm not up on the apps, but Snapchat, TikTok, remember Vines? Everyone was doing Vines. Yeah. And TikTok is like a Viney thing, almost the same. And then, Twitter, but you got Twitter, even though it's renamed X, people they still call it Twitter. They still say Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter, or X, also known as Twitter. And no one's going to Threads. People are like, you know what? No one's going to Threads. So it's like,
I just got my Threads account on Friday, and that place is lame.
So I think people can only handle so much change, and they want some level of consistency. Yeah. And so even though, and maybe it's this generation, as they're getting older, they're like, you know what? Because when you're young, you're like, your attention is like, oh, nice this. And even YouTube was different. Years ago, it was like, hey, Corky, it was almost like a radio show. you know what I mean? All these like funny noises and quick flashes and stuff. And now it's kind of like more a podcast-y because they want more of a longer form setting and where you're spending more time with a particular topic or a person as opposed to like quick flashy videos and topics that, you know, and then the drama on the internet because people just want to relive it and rehash it and just pull, you know what I mean? It's almost like that generation is getting older and now they want more of a sustained some having things sustained as opposed to changing the new, so the memes last longer, you know.
Videos.
So
video memes versus picture
that's
memes.
my perception, but it just seems like things aren't changing, aren't as flexible or as changeable,
sporadic.
Yeah, or has a shorter expiration date, it has a longer shelf life. Culture.
There's some definite staying power in things, and I think something like air conditioning is, I think nobody's demanding, you know, it like window units work really well for the people that use them, and like you said, they were replaced by central units, which nobody knows about, so nobody's demanding like updated central units, you know.
But going back a little bit of being able to maintenance, I have a veteran who his air conditioner broke, central air, so he can't fix it. He doesn't know how to fix it. I mean, if your air conditioner broke, would you know how to fix it? No, you know but that would be one of those handy things that they always say they want. You know, man used to be able to. My dad, he knows electronics. He'd be able to fix electronics, like the lights in the house. He'd be able to replace lights and stuff like that. He understands the electronic fundamentals of, you know, all that kind of stuff. So his property manager, they didn't know, so they gave him a window unit, which is a good fit, but I mean, he had to like make a little cardboard thing because his window's not made to go up or down. It goes like this way. So he has like all this extra gap. So, and it doesn't fill the whole apartment. It's just like he has to sleep in the living room until it's fixed. But that's the idea that we don't know how to fix it. You know what I mean?
Now, but the other thing is though, we don't know how to fix it. However, like yesterday, as my generator wasn't working, I got online and just YouTubed it, and it showed me how to fix it. You know, it showed me and it was way simpler than I expected. In my head, things like air conditioning, I actually did look up how to fix, because I'm scared of my air conditioning breaking down. It's so hot here. Or it was over the summer. And I looked up, if it were to break down, what are the things? And I did look up maintenance things I can do. And I got curious about how air conditioning works, you know, what the function is. Now, it is big pieces put together that I wouldn't be able to, well, I guess I could swap them out if I went and looked for them or whatever. But so, I mean, I think we are in a time where there is a generation that's just Googling things, you know, like, I'll do it myself. You
definitely have to be curious. If you're not willing to learn, then you're just gonna be like, let someone else do it. But it definitely puts the onus on you to look for the information, as opposed to the passed down, like my dad used to do it. He showed me how to do it and stuff. This is kind of like, because I'll do that. I'll Google like random things, you know, like I remember I was looking up how we got the names of our months.
Oh yeah.
And you know, so September, October, November, and December. December is Latin for 10. November is Latin for 9. October is Latin for 8. September is Latin for 7. But yet September is the 9th month. and December's the 12th and not the 10th, because they added 2 months in there, July and August. And
Those are
July is
the
named after Julius Caesar, and August is named after Augustus Caesar.
Augustus.
So
Yeah,
they switch, but why can't you put them in the end so that the numbers line up?
right in the middle.
And they put them in the middle, so now December doesn't mean 10, it's 12 now. October, like octagon, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the 10th month. That's not the 8th month, even though that octagon means 8 sides. You know what I mean?
But June was based off of like the Greek name for like was it like Zeus or something, right?
Yeah, a lot of them were gods. Like March is Mars and
Mars,
stuff.
yeah.
Like a lot, even the days of the week is like that.
Mhm.
They're all gods.
Thor's Day. Yep.
Yeah, Thursday is Thor's Day, and then I think Tuesday is the god of war, which it's not the, it's the because Thor is what kind of god? Norsean god.
Yeah, Norse.
Yeah, so the god of war on Tuesday, the Norsean god, is that god's name, and they just kind of associated with Mars or whatever yeah. So, but Googling those kind of things is something you could do, if you're curious. And one of the things that I'm curious about is like how phrases got to be. Why do people say like, this is the real McCoy? You know what I mean? Or, chip off the old block.
Some of them, though, I've found that like there are, because I've looked at that and because I thought, well, it's because of this, but I've looked up the origin of these things, and some people just don't know. Like it started, we don't know where it started from, but this is where it might have started from. Like here's what it seems like it started from.
Yeah. So, but that's just the curiosity, being able to be curious about the world, and kind of tying it back a little bit is being honest with, I don't know this, and where is this coming from? What's the truth behind this phrase? What's the reality of it? Like the real McCoy, I just keep coming to that one because, I don't know why, but it was this guy, his name was McCoy. He sold train spikes, and people would steal train spikes and like they'll steal them and then they'll try to resell them, or they'll sell really generic versions that would break apart. And he would be like, no, this is sturdy. This is the real McCoy. This is the sturdy one. You're not going to get the fake ones. This is the real McCoy.
The real McCoy.
And they would be like, oh, so that means it's the authentic, sturdy train spike. And then that just became a shorthand for just being authentic. This is the real McCoy. Just that kind of language stuff is just so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think that is something that we kind of talked about when in the Chickenfoot podcast. We talked about how language and common language is super important to being funny and having a good joke.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I come back to is we are, I think mostly you talked about turn of a phrase, or the way we say something.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we can, like, double entendres can elicit laughter.
Yeah.
Just because the cleverness of it. And I was thinking about this, the difference the other day. I was thinking about this, the difference between intelligent humor and just anything to get a laugh. There is certain intelligent humor. I was thinking about different comedians. Yeah, physical humor and slapstick. I tend much more to be, we've talked about this, about me being more of having more physical humor.
Yeah.
but I am intrigued by intellectual humor. You know, like
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about my dad's sense of humor,
mm,
and for me, like, you know, just like the ramble source, like you're like,
mm.
this is a place where there's no rambling. We just get to the source of it, and then I turned it around and be like, oh, this is the source for rambling. You know what I mean? And it goes back to like Steve Martin, where he's like, I'm just rambling man. He's just rambling. The song is just him rambling. And The Idiot was one of his big movies where he's just playing
Yeah.
just an idiot. And my dad, his sense of humor is something as just absurd, just the silly, absurd. I remember showing a scene from South Park, and I don't know if you've ever seen this, where it's basically Whole Foods. And so Stan's father, Randy Marsh, is going to the register, but they always ask if they want to donate to this, and he doesn't really want to donate, but they always make him feel guilty. So every time, like he says, if you don't want to donate, just speak into this mic, and he'd be like, I don't want to. And then it's all like with some blast speaker, I don't want to donate. And then you just have to like touch this button, and then it makes like a hungry kid sound like, oh. And then there was one where he comes back and he's like, oh, the third time, and this is where my dad started laughing, where he's like, the change comes out, and he's like, you have to, there's like a little cutout of a child with holding food in their mouth, and you've got to pull the hand of the picture of the food to get the change out of their mouth. And he's like putting his foot on the kid's face, trying to pull the hand. He's like, you got to get the food out of the mouth. And it's like, they're really hungry. You got to pull the food out of the mouth just to get the change, because you don't want to feed hungry children. And my dad was laughing so hard, seeing, like trying to do everything he can just not to give 17 cents to round up the dollar to feed hungry children. Just the absurdity of like, they're now putting like a picture of a kid who's hungry, and you've got to pull the food out of their mouth to get the change out of it. Oh man. Just it's just like, it's not this subtle play and work. It's just like the absurdity of like, Airplane, like that kind of, where you're
but that comes back,
and they're slapping her, and then the next guy comes up, calm down, and he slaps her, and then there's like a line of guys who are gonna come up and shake her and slap her.
But I think that absurdity is just a subtle difference to, I mean, what we talked a lot about was surprise is an important aspect to making someone laugh. And absurdity, I think, is just, I think you said this once, is that absurdity is just is taking something to a level that people didn't expect, and so that causes surprise, because it's like, well, it's like, oh, I would have never thought you'd have taken it to that level,
Yeah.
I think it's sort of what.
Yeah, it's like Candid Camera. If you watch old Candid Cameras, it was so popular because it was a new concept where I remember one where they would pull into a garage, and then the maintenance guy would say, hey, do you want me to replace the airs out of your tire? And they're like, what? He's like, yeah, we take your air out and put in fresh air. And they're like, what? And, like the idea that you're doing something silly in reality. And it was just like, it's so absurd, because that's not the real world. That's not our experience and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like a fantasy of like this. You're still in the real world, but you're just playing this absurdity within the real world. As opposed to like this play off of words, or, this kind of like conceptual humor. It's more like, this is every day. What if this happened to you? You know what I mean? What would you kind of be doing in this situation?
Yeah, that is the common, like the shared experience, the common experience.
Yeah.
I
It's
I
part of
mean,
the honesty of reality, knowing reality, and then the
mm,
absurdity of this is just not that doesn't happen in real life. You know what I mean? And that's
yeah,
what's funny about it is everybody knows that this is not like a real thing.
the
It
escapism of it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And to dip my toe in a little pop culture stuff, I don't know if you saw
Uh-oh.
Husan, the comedian. He was on the Daily Show where he got in a little hot water because he was talking about he's a Muslim comedian. He was on the Daily Show. If you see a picture of him, you're like,
Okay.
I know that guy. He got in a little hot water because he would be making jokes about like his mosque and like some Muslim uh, people were treating, after 9/11, how a lot of Muslims felt like
Mhm.
they were being discriminated against. And he would talk about how at his mosque things would happen and people and stuff like that. But it was all fake. Like, and he was saying, no,
He made it up.
yeah. And he called it emotional truths as like, well, I'm a comedian. I'm just kind of trying to make
Mm.
it humorous. But that was like a too real of a thing. You know what I mean? Like if you're talking
Mm.
about your experience in the shower and like hair on there, and you're like, that's different than, you know, uh, something that's more serious. And he's getting like a flack back from it because he's making jokes
Mm.
where he's putting himself in the shoes of the person who had that happen to them. And
May or may not have had happened to
well,
them.
it was like, it was happening to other people, but he was just making it look like him. But you do that, like comedians will do that, like, oh, take my wife, please. You know what I mean? Like they don't like their wife or kids, and they do that.
Yeah.
But then this was like on another level of a sense of, people were being treated disgustingly. You know what I mean? Like if if
Mhm.
if he's saying, yeah, I like to beat my wife all the time, and you're like, that's not yeah, you're gonna make jokes from the perspective of a wife beater, like that's kind of like, or a
Mm.
rapist. You're like, yikes. You know what I mean? That's kind of like that's almost like a bridge too far. So he's doing it not as like a general, this is what's happening in the world, but this is what happened to me. And so
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
more,
And it didn't. Yeah.
yeah, more empathetic with him because you're thinking this is a real thing that happened, and he's making light of it. You know what I mean? Like if you see a
Mhm.
handicapped person and so you see somebody making fun of them, you're gonna be like, that's messed up. But if they're making fun of themselves, say, hey, I'm Wheels, and he's in a wheelchair or something, then you're gonna laugh.
Mhm.
But if your friend's just like, oh, look at that guy over there, you're gonna be like, that's kind of cruel. And I think it's that
Mm.
sense. So he got in hot water because he was making himself seem like he was in this real situation when it wasn't him at all.
That's interesting.
I'm surprised you haven't heard about it.
Huh. Hassan? Well, I think it's an interesting case there. I mean, the world of humor is really it's kind of in disarray right now,
Yeah,
where there is upheaval as canceling becomes a thing. I think canceling has become a weapon, a tool more now than ever. I think because of social media and stuff, the reach that people have. I've said often that we've never been ever in the history of our world where somebody has a voice like we do now, where someone can say something and 5 minutes later the president of the United States, or even the
yeah,
president, the leader of another country can read
yeah,
it and respond to it. That's just it's unprecedented, and it makes something like canceling somebody a lot more effective as you get more people and leaders hearing, or seeing in real
yeah.
time that kind of thing. And so,
It
um,
makes the big world small. You know, I mean, even in like and I don't really like talking about politics, but the Republican debate they did, and I'm sure you saw it.
Yeah.
And during the primary, where they opened it up with "Rich Man North of Richmond," that song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, these are people who are trying to be the most powerful person on the planet, and they're talking about this song that just kind of was cultural relevance, and nobody's talking about the Richmond North of Richmond now. You know what I mean? Like, it is a popular song, but it was just like a small trend. Now these people who are, they want to deal with these very serious topics, have to talk about a cultural trend. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it was the number one. It was the number one song on the charts.
Yeah, it is. But there's a lot of songs that are number one. And how many?
Not a lot of songs that are number one by.
What?
What's that? Not a lot of songs that are number one by just a dude like singing in his backyard.
Well, look, there's a lot of songs that got number one. Are we going to have like every president of Canada have to address every cultural TikTok that comes out that gets traction or something like that? I mean, I just think that go ahead.
Well, not to change the subject, but that reminded me, and you're really the only person, maybe not the only person, but I thought like you're a really good person to talk. What do you think about this? And this is like not Republican or Democrat, but just like the change in culture that this illuminates. So Trump didn't go to that. I think it was a really genius idea that he didn't go to that debate. But how genius would it be? Because I watched a YouTuber stream both of them, the Trump interview and the debate. How genius would it be if Trump got some tech guy to help him and he streamed the debate, like during the debate, he streams it on YouTube and like comments on things. The people in the debate can do nothing to respond to anything he says, and he's in control. He's watching everything. He's like, no, they're mischaracterizing that, like
that would
break the internet.
If I was working on his staff, that would be a great idea, because that's usually what he did on Twitter. Like something would be happening, he's like tweeting it live at the moment, and people would be stuck to his Twitter, and they'd be like, oh, he's saying this, and then like they would bring it up in real time, and it doesn't go the other way. You know what I mean? Like they can't back Twitter him. But that would be an interesting thing if he just live streamed it and be able to just make comments.
It would if I was in the debate, I would be livid. I would just quit if I'm DeSantis or something and one of my aides is like, Trump is like responding and commenting in real time while you guys, I'd just be like, I'm out.
Yeah.
What are we doing this for?
Yeah.
It just breaks it. Yeah. It breaks it.
Well, I knew in my mind Trump's going to get it. I mean, there's no way he's not.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in my mind, I was like, people talking about Ron DeSantis. I was like, if he was a smart person, he wouldn't run this time.
He'd wait?
Yeah, because if Trump runs again and he loses, I mean, they're not going to pick him again. The likelihood of him being picked again with his age and waiting another 4 years, like, so they'll move on.
DeSantis can
he's young. He's like 40
young,
or maybe 48 or something, and he can wait if he's smart enough. But he had a lot of heat on him, and he's thinking, I could do this, and it's more of like I think his ego was like, I would be like, I would trump the Trump, and then I would be the new Trump, and everyone who's like carrying the Trump flags or carrying Ron flags, and people were getting Trump tattoos and get Ron tattoos. That's how I knew Trump was gonna get it. My brother was like, maybe the guy from Florida. I was like, nobody's getting Ron DeSantis tattoos. Okay. You know what I mean? There's people who are getting Trump tattoos, and people who are they're not just putting bumper stickers, they're getting their car painted with Trump on it. They're getting like serious things. They're getting their house painted with Trump on it and stuff. Nobody's doing that for any other politician. You know, I would be surprised. I mean, Bernie was the closest thing. Remember Bernie Sanders was getting a few of that.
Maybe Ron. What's his not Ron? Yeah, Ron.
Ron Paul.
Ron Paul. Yeah, Ron Paul got some pretty fanatic people. Well, I'm out of time, but I did want to. We did have one of our more dedicated viewers, especially when it's me and you. Good old J Nass MD. Those glasses be sweet. LOL. He likes them
now
glasses.
that I have to wear reading glasses, I feel like my face looks blank. I look like a serial killer. You know what I mean? Like my face just looks blank, like a simple, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and apropos to what we were saying, he says, this was an hour ago, so I don't know what we were talking about. So is that how you explain Trump? LOL. I think maybe talking about like candid, I don't know, humor or something. And then he says powerful stuff. Well, thank you, Jay, for tuning in. I'm actually going to have him on. He is predisposed for a couple weeks. He's actually taking care of a family member. Great guy, Jay Nass, and interesting guy. We're going to have him on in a couple weeks to talk about things. And he's thinking about starting his own podcast, which I think is a good idea.
Oh, that'll be interesting. What would the topic be? Like
well, it's going to be more focused on like
medical stuff,
because he's a doctor of these certain things. What's it called? Experiments, and how to decipher good data from bad data and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, like you're reading, medical articles and studies and stuff. Oh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I thought so. Well, he also talked about like masks and the data, like going to like studies and data and peer-reviewed stuff, like he has all that knowledge. I had him on a couple times to not a show. What did he say? He said the first episode should be a tutorial on how to properly make a tin hat. Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Man, that's good one. Full I think I might be able to follow that one.
No, but the real one is my first one has to do with how scientific studies and how people expect and even want people to die in these scientific studies. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Well, good, and he can pair that with a YouTube where he's explaining concepts that are assumed within the podcast. So this type of study, well, instead of spending all like an hour trying to explain what that type of study is, like a blind or double blind study, he can do YouTube videos of explaining those details and say, hey, if you want to know what a double blind study is as opposed to a blind, look at this video. And then the podcast could be explaining the details of the actual study that they're doing, as opposed to the understanding of how studies are done and just the fundamentals of what you need to know just to comprehend studies, like statistics. I mean, that would be a good YouTube video.
I look forward to him getting on and talking about these things because he's got an interesting perspective. And then we had several people popping in and out. But so what I do now, I don't know if you know this, but I got. Are we
still live?
Yeah.
Oh. I know we logged up and we're just chatting with each other. I'm just like, hey, I'm picking my nose and stuff and passing gas, let my hair down.
Well, it has been an hour and a half, so we'll wrap it up and say goodbye to everybody. And but I do want to say I am on TikTok now. I gave in, and I actually kind of got into it because there's like this app that will like send clips to TikTok, and you can like put different music behind it, and you can do all kinds of things.
I think you would do better at TikTok than you would at podcast. I think TikTok could be a good segue into people getting into your podcast, but I think you have quick takes and you can put it out there. I don't know. Me personally, I think that you would sell it easier than an hour and a half podcast. You know?
Oh yeah, hour and a half podcasts are impossible to sell, but I enjoy talking to people for an hour and a half more than I do.
You clip your podcast and put it on TikTok?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've done. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go to my TikTok, you'll see like all little clips, but it's fun because you can put like little stickers and music behind it. I haven't really totally got into all that. So the furthest I've gone is put music behind them.
Go through the chicken podcast and do some TikToks with that.
Yeah.
Because we had a lot of funny jokes and stuff that we told. So it can kind of like, and just put it under the umbrella of like the Ramble Source podcast.
Family.
Yeah, family. And
and
this way you can still like, you can put some funny ones that can draw people in, but then you also have like serious topics that you do. And so when people see bullheaded guy, they're like, oh, this is going to be a funny one. And then they see your dad, they're like, this is serious.
You know what's funny though is that me and my dad did what me and you did. We went. I printed out some AI jokes, and we went through and tried to make them better. That was a pretty good episode.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know it's getting late, but great talking to you.
You too,
Thanks
brother.
everyone for
Thanks for
Ramble Source. For your source of rambling, come to Ramble Source. Oh, no rambling, just the source. Here.
I'll say goodbye to everybody.